Hey, and welcome back to the Art of a Life Well Lived. I am Christine Regan Lake, and it's good to be back here again. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would like, share, or subscribe to my channel if you find the information valuable, as I try to get this information out to those who want and need to hear it. And those likes, shares, and subscribes help bring in new people as well. So anyway, all right, let's get started. So today I want to talk about trauma bonding. So why is it you can't stop loving the narcissist who has abused you? Now, when I say narcissist that abused you, that could be a lover, it could be a spouse, it could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be a friend, it could be a boss, right? Trauma bonding doesn't just happen exclusively in intimate personal relationships. The other thing to realize is that if you have been a victim of narcissistic abuse as a child from a parent, there is a very strong possibility that you will go on later in life to attract a narcissistic partner who will abuse you as well, because that is your definition of what love is. When you were growing up as a child and your parents treated you the way that they treated you, even if it's abusive, your subconscious mind as a child says, this is what love is. So then later on, as an adult, unless you've done the work to look at your core beliefs and heal your trauma, you will go out and you will find a narcissist to replace the parent in that situation, and you will believe that narcissistic abuse is actually what love is. We get very distorted beliefs around what love is when you grow up in a dysfunctional environment. Okay, so why is it so hard to break from a narcissist? The reason it's so hard to break from a narcissist is because trauma bonding is a cycle of behavior, a way in which you are treated, in which the person who is abusing you goes back and forth between being very loving to being unkind, and then very loving and then very unkind. It's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And in the beginning of the relationship, you will typically be love bombed. Love bombing is when they first connect with you. They're going to flood you with so much emotional attention and affection, and you will feel like no one has ever loved you the way this person loved you. And what that does is it plants a seed into the person that they are connecting with, that's like an anchor, right? So the love bombing is to plant their emotional anchor into you so that you look at them and be like, this person is my everything, right? Then what happens is, as time goes by and then they feel that they've got you hooked, what they will do is now slowly they will start to devalue you. They will start making little insults, make pop shots about your body. Oh, you don't look so good in that outfit. Oh, your hair's not looking that well. Have you gained some weight? That was a really stupid comment to make. Do you really think you're worth that much at work? Do you really think that you should get that promotion? You can't go for that job. That's way above your skill set. Things like that, right? So they want to devalue. So the first phase is the love bombing. The second phase, they go into devalue, where all of a sudden they'll start making those insults and trying to cut down your self-worth and your self-esteem. Now, in between those devalues, they'll still continue to vacillate between positive comments. Oh, you look beautiful, whatever. So it's, oh, you look beautiful. Oh, do you think you look fat? Oh, you look pretty. I like that outfit. Do you think you've gained weight? It's back and forth and back and forth. And that constant back and forth between positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, negative is what creates that trauma bond. And it's been equated to like the Stockholm syndrome, when hostages are taken and their captors will do that. They're kind and then they're mean, and then they're kind and then they're mean, and it creates this addiction to that person. It actually creates a chemical addiction. So what ends up happening is, the more that they do this, the more that they do that trauma bonding, positive, negative, the more you become bonded to that person, and the harder it is for you to leave that unhealthy relationship that is really damaging you emotionally, physically. And when you're on the receiving end of trauma bonding, it's going to trigger your fight or flight. It's going to trigger your abandonment wounds. It's going to trigger fear and worry and your worthiness issues. Like, why is he treating me like this? What did I do? They'll blame you and start making you feel like, everything is your fault. And so it just has this very, very, very negative spiral to it as you move through the connection. So the first phase is love bombing, then they go to devaluing, and then eventually they go to the discard phase. The discard phase is when they've basically realized that now they're not getting the amount of narcissistic supply that they once got from you, and maybe you figured out that they're not all that you thought they were. So now they think that you've seen through them, and so now your usefulness to them as a narcissistic supply, as a source of attention and affection and things like that, is no longer valuable to them. So now they're going to discard you and they're going to throw you away. They'll break up with you. They're not going to give you any kind of closure. And typically what happens is they'll do the discard, and then at some future point, they will come back and they'll hoover. Hoover means it's like the Hoover vacuum, right? They're going to try to vacuum you back up, and they'll come back and they'll say, when they do the hoovering, they'll typically revert back to the love bombing phase, which is all of a sudden now they start gushing beautiful things about you, telling you all positive things about yourself, trying to hoover you back up and reel you back in so that they can regain you as a source of narcissistic supply. So it's important to understand these phases of the relationship and how they work, and some of the tools and strategies that you can use to navigate away from a dysfunctional, unhealthy relationship. So what are some of the steps that you can take to release yourself from this trauma bonding? Well, the very first thing you need to do is you need to learn the gray rock technique. The gray rock technique is essentially just like, if you think about like a gray rock, what is a gray rock? A gray rock is just sitting on the ground. You don't even see it. It's just a stone cold rock. There's nothing. So what that means when you say embrace the gray rock technique, it means that when the narcissist comes at you and is trying to pick a fight, trying to do something to insult you that's going to trigger some kind of emotional reaction, because a narcissist feeds off of energy. And the energy can be either positive or negative. It doesn't matter. If you're not gushing with love for them and giving them that kind of narcissistic supply and energy, attention, affection, they'll take the negative kind. They'd rather, if they're not going to get love from you, then they'll take a fight, whatever it's going to be. They're trying to trigger something in you. So the gray rock technique just means you become a stone cold rock. They say something to you to try to trigger you, to trigger a fight, something like that. You just look at them like a gray rock. They get absolutely nothing. They realize that they're not going to get their narcissistic emotional burst of energy from you. And what happens is someone who has been, a child who has grown up in a narcissistic family, who has gone on to then become a narcissist, their nervous system has become attenuated, has become used to and calibrated to chaos. And so they feed off of energy. And so if once they're past the perfect, like lovey-dovey, beautiful honeymoon stage, which is awesome and feels great and is very emotional and there's all sorts of excitement. Once you've kind of reached the point in the relationship where you've bonded closer and now it's kind of more, you've settled in a little bit, it's not those huge highs. Well, now they need that rush of energy, so they're addicted to chaos, which means they draw to them magnetically chaotic situations and fights because their nervous system has become used to, calibrated, addicted to chaos. So they have to manufacture chaos. If chaos isn't actually just unfolding in the environment, then they're going to create the chaos because they need the energetic hit. So understanding how you can use gray rock to neutralize those situations, that is your best bet, because what they will discover over time is that if every time they try to trigger you and bait you, you go gray rock and you get no hit, they will eventually move on to another target because they know their strategies no longer work with you. So you have to be smart enough not to fall for the bait. You need to be able to transcend that situation, see it for what it is, and say, nope, gray rock, and just not respond and engage. And every time you give them the hit, every time you choose not to do gray rock and you choose to engage them in a fight and all sorts of like chaos or whatever, they've won. So every time you fail to do that, just understand you have they have won in that situation. You have forfeited your power, and you are allowing them to win in that situation because you've allowed them to manipulate your energy. The quality of your life is the quality of your energy management. So if you allow yourself to be manipulated by other people, then you have to take ownership of that. You need to understand that you're a part of the problem. Okay, so what's the next step? So the first thing is that you're going to do gray rock. The second thing is that you need to create physical separation. If that means you need to move out of the apartment that you're living with them, the house that you share, whatever, being in the same physical environment with a narcissist who has been abusive to you is detrimental to your health. You cannot heal in the same physical environment in which you got sick. If living in a space with someone who is abusive to you causes you to walk on eggshells all the time, you are triggering your body into fight or flight, which is extremely detrimental to your adrenals, to your lymph system, to your autoimmune system, everything. So you need to create physical distance so that you can create the space in which you will be able to heal emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, and potentially financially, depending upon what the situation has been. Okay, so the next thing is, so you move out, you've broken up, whatever, you're not doing anything. The next thing is you need to go no contact, which means you need to cut off all communication so that they can't reel you back in, so they can't hoover you back in, so that you cannot be manipulated. Because especially when this first goes down, you are very vulnerable, and it will be very difficult for you to, to get over them, to heal, if they're constantly reaching out to you and things like that. So you have to go no communication. No communication is the smartest strategy that you can use to help you heal, move on, and to resolve this traumatic relationship that you have, and to heal from the trauma bonding. Because if they're staying in constant communication with you, how can you move forward? How can you move forward in life and heal and move past this if you're constantly being drawn back into the past? So no communication. So the first thing is go gray rock, create physical separation, and then cut off communication, no contact. Okay, the next thing you need to do, number 4, is you need to self-reflect. And you really need to look in the mirror, and you need to identify the flags that you ignored, because more than likely there were red flags when they first started insulting you and making comments to cut you down about your intelligence, about your physical attractiveness, or whatever. When they first started insulting you, what did you do? Did you call them on it? Did you say this is unacceptable? Or did you gloss over it and say it's not a big deal? Or were you a conflict avoidant, so you didn't want to start a fight, so you just ignore it? So you need to self-reflect, and you need to identify all the red flags that you ignored and all the places that you dropped the ball to self-correct the relationship that you didn't do. And I'm not saying beat yourself up, but I'm saying take accountability for the things that you should have done. Like the very first time they insulted you, you should have shut that down. The first time there was any kind of form of a lie or betrayal, did you call them on it? When we ignore the flags, it eventually will implode on us. And so we just have to take personal responsibility and accountability for the part that we played in the dysfunction of the relationship. Because as much as your ego wants to blame it all on them, you can't, because you did play a part, and it's important for you to understand the part you played so that in the next connection that you make, you refuse to play that part again, that you're not going to be passive, that you're not going to allow yourself to be insulted, you're not going to allow the same negative dysfunctional patterns to destroy your relationship, but also to bring down your sense of self-worth, self-esteem, and things like that. Okay. The next thing you need to do, number 5, is you want to understand some of the things that I was telling you about before. The love bombing, the devalue, the discard, and the hoovering. You need to understand what the basic tenets of a narcissist is, what the typical flow is, the life cycle of a narcissistic relationship. You just need to understand this concept One, so that you can get clarity on like the past relationship, because as you start to understand them, you'll go back to the relationship and you'll look and you'll say, okay, yeah, that was the love bombing, and this was the devaluing, and this is where the discard was, and oh yeah, this was the hoovering. It's important for you to understand this situation and how these patterns unfold in a relationship, because if if you've had a pattern of being with narcissists, more than likely you may end up with another one. And if you don't identify the tenets of narcissistic personality traits and the life cycle of a narcissistic relationship, you will more than likely fall into another one, and you will re-traumatize. Every next relationship you have with another narcissist will re-traumatize you and make it harder and harder and harder for you to heal, because with each person they keep whittling away at the foundation of your self-worth, self-esteem, and your self-confidence. So it's super important to get clear and understand all of this stuff so that you can stop it from happening again in the future. Okay, so the next thing is, you want to, number 6, you want to feel your feelings. It's super common to want to just brush everything under the carpet, and just move on and not have to face the painful experiences. But the reality is, you have to feel it to heal it. And bottling everything up, pushing it down, and pretending it didn't hurt you doesn't help you. It will physically and emotionally and spiritually and mentally make you sick. You have to face the trauma that you have experienced. You have to forgive yourself for allowing it to happen, and you just need to release it from the body. But to release it, you have to feel it. I know it sucks and it's a really, really awful experience to have to go back and bring yourself to that moment and think about those things and feel those feelings and cry or scream, or whatever it is for you in terms of releasing it, all those emotions that you're going through. It is super important for you to feel what you feel, because it was traumatic. It was very painful. There was betrayal. There was, wounding. And there's a lot of guilt and shame. Guilt and shame are awful emotions. They are like two of the lowest vibrating emotions you can feel. Guilt and shame will truly make you sick, because the lower your frequency is, the easier it is for disease to get into your body, to take over and spread. So if you are harboring deep levels of shame and guilt and regret and despair, it is very unhealthy for you, and you really need to take the time to nurse those wounds, to give yourself love and compassion for what you have been through. Forgive yourself. Forgive, your family members who basically entrained you to narcissistic abuse, because that's what happened. Is you were probably abused as a child, and that is what made you believe that that's what love was supposed to be like. And so then you went out and recreated that and found that in your intimate relationship. Okay, so what comes next? So after you feel your feelings, the next thing you want to do, number 7, is you want to create healthy boundaries. So self-love is self-care, and self-love requires healthy boundaries. Learning to say no, learning to voice what your wants, needs, and desires are, and refusing to allow yourself to be abused, to be neglected, to have your needs ignored. A healthy relationship is about both people having the freedom to speak their truth about what their wants, needs, and desires are, and for each party to work to meet the needs of the person they love. If you love someone, of course you want to meet their needs because you love them. It's not out of some kind of obligation. It's because you love them and you understand that they want to feel special and they want to feel cared for, and you'll do that organically because that's what love is. So creating healthy boundaries is super important as you are taking that path of healing after narcissistic abuse, and you are trying to heal from trauma bonding and ensure that you never become trauma bonded again, because you deserve better than that. And it's time now for you to be able to experience a healthy love instead of a dysfunctional, toxic love. Okay, so number 8, you want to create a list of what your musts are for a relationship. What are your musts? So many times people end up in relationships, and they're in relationships with people who don't share their values. Like, what is important to you? Is monogamy important to you? Is marriage important to you? Is spirituality important to you? Is physical touch and an active sex life important to you? Understanding and articulating what your musts are for a relation is super important, because love is not enough. Love is not enough, because the reality is that more people cave to fear than they do rise to love, because their ego is so sensitive. If you have not done the emotional healing work to grow yourself emotionally, to be an emotionally mature person, more than likely when the shit hits the fan, or when your ego has been triggered in your intimate relationships, it absolutely will be, because your intimate relationships are the most vulnerable relationships, because this is the person that you are getting completely naked with, emotionally, physically, the person that sees you, sees all of you, sees the flaws, the fears, and so this is the person, because you love them in a way and you crave their love and their attention, whatever, they are going to trigger you probably more than any other person on the planet. And if you have not done the work to grow yourself emotionally, to become an emotionally mature adult who knows how to communicate their feelings, you will take those triggers as personal attacks, which they're not. When someone triggers you, just doing something normally, someone who is wounded will find offense in anything, even when it's not an offense, when there was nothing done. It's your interpretation. So unless you do the emotional healing work to grow yourself to be an emotionally mature adult, you're going to create you're going to be just basically living off of triggered responses, and you'll be in a toxic relationships. So you want to make sure that if you personally have done the healing work and you are ready to be in a healthy relationship, you need to make sure that you're dating someone who's emotionally mature, who knows how to communicate their feelings, who knows how to feel what they feel. It takes two healthy people, two people who are, and I'm not saying like everyone's person, like, you reach some like destination level of healed, right? Healing is a continual process, but you need to be with someone who is committed to co-creating a healthy relationship. And if someone is unable to take accountability for their actions and admit when they're wrong, if they're unable to communicate their wants, needs, and desires in a relationship, I don't care how much you love them, you're not going to be able to have a healthy relationship, because a healthy relationship requires healthy communication. It requires love, respect, kindness, and compassion. It requires the ability to own your shit and apologize when you're wrong. And so that's just the reality. So you have to understand what your musts are. And if having a healthy relationship is a must for you, then you just need to be clear that you're co-creating it with someone who has the ability to co-create a healthy relationship. Okay, and then the last one is you want to create a nice support network of friends and family that can be around you as you walk this path of healing after narcissistic abuse, because it's an emotional journey. It's not pretty, and it may take some time. It may not be something that you can just like heal and resolve in a month, whatever. It's a journey, not a destination. All right. So that is what I wanted to share with you regarding trauma bonding and why you can't stop loving the narcissist. And just as a recap, it's hard to stop loving the narcissist because of the trauma bonding that you experience in the relationship. And the trauma bonding happens because of the initial love bombing, where you are flooded with love and attention, and you are made to feel like you are the most extraordinary person on the planet, and no one has ever loved you as much as this person ever. The second thing they do is they devalue you to slowly start eating away at your self-esteem and self-worth. This is, by the way, so that you won't walk away. If you have low self-esteem, then you will stay with them even as they insult you and put you down and abuse you. You know what I mean? So there's a distinctive reason on why they do that. So it's the love bombing followed by devaluing, then the discard. When they discard you, they're discarding you because they've now realized that you're no longer the narcissistic supply you once were, and they're going to go out and get somebody else who will now meet their needs and fill them with the love and attention and the affection that they need. And then finally, they'll come back and hoover you. They'll come try to scoop you back up with praise and compliments and all the other things so that you will come back to them, and then you can be reintegrated into their cadre of people that they use for narcissistic supply, where they get their love and attention for. Because narcissists usually have like a group of people from which they can siphon off the energy from. There's normally like a full-time person, but then there's a whole other group of people that they have in that mix to give them the love and attention. And they have like, the flying monkeys, which are the people that do their bidding, that they manipulate to go out and cause problems and triangulate and things like that. So it's really important for you to understand the whole narcissistic dynamic. And the more you educate yourself on this process, the better, I don't want to say armed because it sounds so violent, but the better prepared you will be for the next relationship, to make sure that you never end up in another one because they're traumatic and you're done, right? It's time to close that chapter on unhealthy narcissistic relationships. So again, to recap, go gray rock. You start to do not respond to them. You're going to create physical space. You're going to cut off communication and go no contact. You'll self-reflect on what part you played in the relationship, the red flags that you ignored, and the things where you didn't speak up your truth when you felt like your boundaries were being violated. You're going to learn to understand the basic personality traits of the narcissist. You're going to feel your feelings and allow yourself to process the emotions of what that traumatic experience was like for you. You're going to learn to create healthy boundaries and say no when it's no. And you're going to then create a list of musts of what you want in your relationship and what you're no longer tolerating and what your deal breakers are. And the last thing is, you're going to create that strong, healthy support network of friends and family who will be there for you, by your side as you walk that healing path. So there you have it. So hopefully that brought you some clarity on this process. It's quite a journey healing after narcissistic abuse, but it's well worth it. So I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope you will join me again for my sessions. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.